Did ancient people really possess knowledge that we don't? Knowledge of time itself or encounters with beings not of this world? Across the world, archaeologists are uncovering artifacts that simply don't belong to the age they date back to. A watch buried centuries before watches existed. A crystal lens from a time when optics weren't even invented. Light bulbs carved into the walls in the temples of Egypt. According to carbon dating and geological evidence, these objects predate the very technologies they resemble by thousands, even millions of years. If these findings are accurate, then knowledge, or perhaps even objects, may have somehow slipped through time. In 2012, during an excavation at a 400-year-old tomb near Shaanxi, China, archaeologists were carefully uncovering a sealed coffin from the Ming Dynasty. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary, the kind of dig they had done hundreds of times before, until one of the researchers brushed away the dirt from a small metallic object buried beside the remains. At first, they thought it was just a ring, but when they cleaned it, they froze. The tiny object looked exactly like a modern wristwatch, complete with a crown, a winding knob, and even what appeared to be the engraving of the word Swiss. Even more unbelievable, the time on the miniature dial was frozen at 10:06. The discovery was quickly nicknamed the Swiss watch ring. But according to every known record, the Ming Dynasty ended in 1644, more than 2 centuries before Switzerland even began producing wristwatches. How could something like that possibly exist inside a sealed, untouched tomb? The artifact's strange appearance set off a wave of theories. Some suggested it was a prank or contamination, maybe a modern ring that had somehow slipped into the soil during earlier work. The tomb had been sealed solid, with no signs of recent disturbance and no modern tools nearby. And the watch itself showed signs of age, with corrosion consistent with centuries-old burial conditions. Mainstream archaeologists called it coincidence, claiming it was likely a misidentified decorative ring that just happened to resemble a watch. But to many who saw the photographs, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. The tiny dial, the miniature hands, the word Swiss. If it was simply a ring, it was the most perfectly accidental piece of modern design ever created centuries before its time. In 1885, near the Austrian town of Wolfsegg, a coal worker split open a block of lignite that had been buried for millions of years. Inside that solid chunk of ancient coal was something that stopped him cold, a small, perfectly formed metal object. It was angular, symmetrical, and clearly shaped by human hands, yet the coal it was found in dated back 60 million years. When scientists examined it, they called it the Salzburg Cube or the Wolfsegg iron, and immediately realized they were looking at something that did not belong. The object was almost square, about the size of a fist, with sharp edges and a deep groove running around its middle, looking more like a piece of machinery than a natural mineral. The first tests showed that it was made of nearly pure iron, with no nickel and no impurities, far too refined for any known tool from the ancient world. And that is where the mystery began. If the coal was truly tens of millions of years old, how could anything man-made be sealed inside it? Some scientists suggested it was a meteorite, but its shape was too precise and too mechanical. Others claimed it had simply fallen into a crack in the coal long after the layer formed. But even that did not explain the deep mineralization that covered its surface, matching the surrounding rock perfectly. For decades, the cube was passed from museum to museum, tested, photographed, and debated. No one could agree on its origin. In 1850, deep in the ruins of Nimrud, the ancient Assyrian capital in modern-day Iraq, British archaeologist Sir Austen Henry Layard uncovered something that didn't belong. Among broken pottery and carved ivory, he found a small, oval piece of rock crystal, perfectly shaped, polished, and slightly convex. It looked nothing like the other artifacts around it. It wasn't a jewel, and it wasn't decorative. When light passed through it, it magnified objects behind it, just like a lens. That discovery would later be known as the Nimrud lens, or sometimes the London crystal lens, because today it rests in the British Museum. And it has continued to puzzle scientists ever since. The lens is over 3,000 years old, dating back to around 750 BCE, from the reign of King Sargon II, a time when, according to mainstream history, optical technology simply didn't exist. Yet this small piece of crystal was shaped with such precision that it could easily serve as part of a telescope, a magnifier, or even a primitive camera lens. Researchers who studied it found fine polishing marks on its surface, the kind that would require controlled, repetitive grinding with abrasives, something that shouldn't have been possible using tools from that era. Some say it may have been used by Assyrian craftsmen to create their incredibly detailed carvings, allowing them to work with microscopic precision. Others go even further, suggesting it might have been part of an early optical instrument, proof that the ancients understood light and lenses long before Galileo or Newton. Mainstream scholars argue that it was probably just a decorative object, or maybe a simple magnifying glass used for engraving. But even that explanation admits something astonishing, that more than 2,500 years before the invention of the modern lens, someone somewhere already knew how to make one. Deep under the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, there is a small hidden chamber covered in carvings that have puzzled experts for years. On the walls are scenes showing people standing beside huge bulb-shaped objects, each one connected by what looks like a wire to a box-like device. Inside those shapes, you can see curved lines, almost like glowing filaments inside a glass tube. To most archaeologists, these carvings are nothing more than symbols, stories of creation, energy, and the gods. But to engineers and modern eyes, the images look almost too familiar. They look like light bulbs, thousands of years before electricity was even supposed to exist. This idea, called the Dendera Light theory, suggests that maybe the ancient Egyptians had some kind of advanced knowledge, perhaps a way to create light without fire. And here is where it gets strange. Deep inside Egypt's temples and tombs, the walls are bright and clean, with no smoke, no soot, and no burn marks anywhere. If they used oil lamps or torches, there should be signs of fire, but there aren't. So how did they carve and paint deep inside these pitch-black chambers? That question has never really been answered. Mainstream Egyptologists say the carvings only show the god Harsamtus emerging from a lotus flower, the snake inside the bulb representing energy and life. But for many who have seen the chamber in person, it is hard to shake the feeling that these carvings might be showing something real, something the ancient world once understood and then completely lost. In the dry desert of Nevada, hidden between the cliffs and sand, lies a cave that changed the way people looked at ancient legends. It is called Lovelock Cave, and for the local Paiute tribe, it has always been a place surrounded by dark stories. Stories about a race of giants who once lived in the area. According to their legend, these giants were taller than ordinary men, with light-colored hair and enormous strength. They were feared because they hunted the Paiute people and even ate them. For generations, it was told as myth. But in the early 1900s, when miners entered the caves searching for bat guano to use as fertilizer, they found something no one expected: ancient artifacts buried deep inside. Baskets, tools, bones, and something else. Human skeletons that were far larger than normal. Some reports said the bones measured over 7 to 8 feet tall. One skull was so large that a normal human jaw could fit inside it. The miners were shocked, and soon archaeologists were called in to investigate. Excavations uncovered more than 10,000 artifacts, including duck decoys, woven mats, and weapons unlike anything used by known tribes. The bones were studied, and while many scientists claimed they came from ordinary humans, local newspapers kept reporting one strange detail. The hair found in the cave was not black like the native tribes, but red or reddish-brown. That detail matched exactly what the Paiute elders had always said, that the giants had red hair and lived in the caves until the tribes finally trapped and burned them inside. Over time, most of the large bones disappeared into private collections and museum storage, and official reports quietly downplayed the giant claims. But for many, Lovelock Cave still stands as evidence that ancient legends may hold more truth than we have ever been willing to believe.